Hey guys, welcome to the video. I'm really sorry about that. I had so much trouble getting it working. I was like, oh my god, and it turns out I just could not get it working in the end, so I had to open up another account. Okay, I'm not quite sure if there's many people joining us today, but I'm going to tell you what the subject is about. It's called Paganism for Beginners. So, believe it or not, I am a pagan, and I have been pagan for maybe about 6 or 7 years. And I'm called a Hellenic pagan. So what that means is I worship the Greek gods from Greek mythology, like Zeus and Hera, and the main 12 Olympian gods. So for my structure, my system is mainly aimed around the 12 Olympians and the Greek gods. That's not to say I don't work with other gods as well, but that's my main faction, the main sort of area I work with. But anyway, the big question is, what exactly is paganism? Okay, that's, my friends, is a really difficult question to answer, because basically paganism is not one religion. It's actually several religions grouped together. So it's actually several religions grouped together, and the main thing those religions share in contact, the same symbolism they have, is they're all nature-based religions. So paganism has existed since right through to the dawn of time. And I'm talking about a much older religion than Christianity. Christianity is like 2,000 maybe years old or slightly older, but paganism could be like 10,000, like right since the dawn of time paganism has existed. So one way or another, all different cultures throughout history, the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, they all had their way of seeing things. I hope you guys can hear me. It's saying slow connection in the front corner. Well, basically, every culture throughout history has their own way of doing things, really. They have their own set of gods, their own set of rules and ethnics, their own style almost. And paganism, so I can give you a few examples. I'm thinking the best way of explaining it is this, is say that, okay, so say this is you. This is a way of explaining it. And say, we'll say that is God. So how do you view God? Do you view God as a single figure? Do you believe him as just one god or a goddess, or just one single divine figure, all-knowing, all like knows everything, is in charge of the world? A bit like Christianity, that could be a way of viewing God. But there's other ways of viewing God as well. There's you could see God as, even in Zoroastrian beliefs, there's a figure called Ahura Mazda, I think. And it's actually ancient Persia believes there's, a bit like Christianity, there's one God and there's one sort of figure underneath God. So you can view God as one single figure, that's man and that's God. But you could also view God as a trinity, and that is another way of viewing God. Instead of viewing him as one figure, there could be few figures, 3 figures. Even in Christianity, they believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And in pagans, this could be the triple moon goddess, or the maiden, the mother of the crone. There's one figure, but he's 3 in 1. And that is another way of viewing God. But what if you view God, what if you don't view God as a figure? So say that you don't view God as a figure at all. Say you view him as a whole, all-knowing sort of intelligence. In Buddhist culture and Zen Buddhism, they believe in being one with the universe. They trust in the universe and pray to the universe, and almost like being one with the universe. And that's another example of viewing God. You could view lots and lots of different gods. You can view, like, there's hundreds of thousands of gods. So you could, terrible handwriting, sorry guys, view gods as lots and lots of things, like many gods if you want. And in Hinduism, they believe in the many faces of Krishna. They believe that Krishna has many faces, and Ganesh and Kali and Shiva, all examples of one of his many faces. So that's an example of viewing many gods. It could be one figure, it could be 3 figures, it could be an all-knowing intelligence. like the Matrix. You could view gods as lots of gods, and you can pray to different gods for different things. And so there's many, many ways that this can go. And there's many ways of almost viewing the divine, if you want. And I can give you a few more examples. Even maybe you don't believe in God at all. Maybe you're an atheist, or maybe you view yourself as that single figure. So you view yourself as God. You view yourself as being in the center of the universe. It sounds crazy, but there are belief systems out there who actually see themselves. They don't believe in any God. They just believe in personal power, opposed to believing in the power of a divine force or an all-knowing force. And that's an example of it. And even spiritual but not religious people, actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do an arrow pointing to the heart chakra, because spiritual but not religious people who actually meditate into crystal healing, they don't believe in, perhaps they connect to their spirit guides, but so I would actually point that to the heart chakra, because you're you're looking after yourself, you're sending love to yourself, and you're actually, so it's a bit like that. So guys, there's so many different ways of viewing God, and I don't believe any way of viewing God is wrong. It's just different from different cultures, and I believe there's some truth in all religions out there. There's actually some truth in everything. And I wanted to say quickly about the different types of paganism, but I also wanted to really quickly say about somebody who was a very, very inspirational figure and philosopher. His name was Carl Jung, and he's one figure that influenced modern day paganism. So Carl Jung, basically, he actually found out that all cultures, through all different time zones in history, they all shared one thing in common, and that is the belief system of archetypes. So archetypes, there's the lover archetype, the warrior, the leader, the king, the magician archetype. And all cultures throughout history had that one thing in common. For example, in the warrior archetype, you can think of, I don't know, Thor from Greek mythology, or Tyr, the warrior god, perfect, thanks mum. And you can actually also, even in other cultures, like Slavic paganism has the figure Perun, who's god of thunder. And even Mars or Ares in Greek culture, that's an example of archetypes. And we all, believe it or not, we're all part of that same divine force. So that means, technically, God can be seen as a figure outside of ourselves that we pray to, but he can also be seen as a figure inside of ourselves. And that is, basically, that's where archetypes come in. We all have those archetypes within us, the warrior archetype, the hero. And so that means we're all part of that bigger whole, that all part God is in us, and we're a part of God, I believe. And I'll say really quickly here, there is something in paganism called the right-handed path and the left-handed path. And basically, the right-handed path means somebody who believes in one great divine figure who prays to a force that's outside of him, like what I spoke about God being many things. So basically the right-handed path and left-handed path. The right-handed path is believing in a deity or a higher power, but the left-handed path is completely different. It's like believing in your own personal power. So it's a bit more, that's not what we're talking about here though. So we're talking about believing the right-handed path, but there is something called the left-handed path, and that means personal power. But that's actually not what we're talking about here. But I can honestly say that paganism has existed through throughout the whole of history. Ancient Sumerians, they had their own set of deities, and they built these great statues. They even Molat or Baal. So if it sounds a bit grim from a Christian perspective, but this is not the Christian way of seeing this divine force. The Sumerians believed in Molat or Baal. The Egyptians, they actually worshipped deities like Osiris or Isis, and they built great pyramids as a way of trying to bridge that connection between themselves and the divine. And the ancient Greeks, they actually believed they had their own set of gods, and the Romans. So it almost sounds way confusing what I'm saying here, but paganism can be seen through so many different lenses, and there's not really, it can go like forever, literally. There's so many. But all gods actually did start off in the human psyche, and and all cultures throughout history. The Greeks borrowed from the Egyptians, and they set their own gods based on Egyptian gods. The Romans based their gods on the Greeks, who borrowed their gods from the Egyptians. Even in Norse paganism, they borrowed their gods from Hindu terminology. So, one way or another, all faiths have copied or got ideas through different faiths. There's nothing wrong with borrowing from different faiths or different sets of gods if you feel that suits you. And there's not really any limits to what you believe in. But I can honestly say a bit about the major sects of paganism. Honestly, paganism is such a wide majority and such a huge subject. But I can say about different sorts of paganism. There's something called chromatic paganism. And basically, chromatic paganism is based on Egyptian terminology. So they worship the gods from ancient Egypt, and they give offering. And ancient Egyptian paganism is called Kemetic paganism in the pagan community. And there's Norse paganism. I already spoke about Norse paganism. So gods like Odin, who's a god of wisdom, and Thor, basically, Norse paganism is very, very popular among pagans. Many pagans do feel connection to Norse paganism and the warrior virtues in Norse paganism. And it speaks about Odin, and it's a great sort of system to be into. So this is the symbol I'm doing for Norse paganism. And in Norse paganism, they do have their whole set of runes, and they believe each rune has a connection to a god. So through connecting with the power of runes, they believe they connect to the same divine force as the gods. And there's even sects called Asusa-Katu and Norse pagan sects like Odinism. And there's even sects, I know there's even a sect called Lokians, and they worship the god Loki. So Norse pagan is another very, very popular form of paganism. The next form of paganism I want to talk about briefly is called Celtic Wicca. So it was Gerald Gardner, and then I think it was the 1930s, around that time, he created the concepts of Wicca. And basically, Wicca is, I'm trying to get all the words together here. Basically, Wicca is based on Celtic paganism, and they believe in worshipping one male god and one female god, and it's very much structured around the solstices and equinoxes. So they celebrate the full moons, and they celebrate the seasonal shifts in the year, like in Bollock and Salem, going through the year. And Wicca, they believe in something called the law of the three. So that basically means if it harms none, do whatever you want. But you'll be surprised how hard that is. So Wiccans are very peaceful, nature-centered, like individuals who connect with the divine feminine. So that's another sect of paganism. There's Slavic paganism, and basically it's also called the Slavic native faith. So they have their own concept of gods, and like the god Perun and Baba Yaga. And they have a whole set of deities around the Slavic beliefs. And the next thing I want to talk about is one thing I do know quite a bit about, and that is Hellenic paganism. And basically, so Hellenic paganism is they worship the Greek gods. So in Hellenic structure, they mainly worship the Olympian gods, and they worship the gods of ancient Greece, but they also worship the heroes from Greek mythology. So Hellenic pagan is somebody who works with Greek terminology, and Roman paganism is very, very similar to Greek paganism. They have those set of gods, except they renamed all the deities in ancient Greece and actually changed them to Roman vocations. So they changed Zeus to Jupiter. And they changed one god they haven't changed is the god Apollo, believe it or not. But all the other gods are Artemis, they changed to Diana. What I would say is the main difference between Hellenic paganism and Roman paganism is probably, I would say that the gods are more structured and geared towards the war side of things. Also in Roman paganism, there's the god in Greek mythology. There's the god Ares, and believe it me, the god Ares is greatly despised in Greek paganism. A lot of, that's not to say people don't worship Ares. I worship him, but they sort of see him as a coward, a war-hungry brute who charges into battle screaming, and he actually is feared a bit like a dog, like almost like a dog. He can be sort of seen like that. I don't want to anger him talking about him, but in Roman paganism, they believe in the god Mars. So they actually changed the god Ares to Mars. In Roman paganism, Mars is a very, very important deity, second only to Jupiter. So he's a very, very important figure in that. And I also wanted to say about pop culture paganism, because that is something that is around these days, and some people don't want anything to do with pop culture paganism. But basically, pop culture paganism means you worship characters from computer games like Batman. You worship characters like, even from films like The Matrix. You actually worship those figures, and you see it's almost like the more you worship them, you give that entity sort of power. So pop culture paganism is like working with thought forms. And some pagans don't want anything to do with pop culture, magic or paganism, but everyone does work differently. There's nothing wrong if you don't feel connection to Greek gods or Roman gods. You can connect to pop culture paganism and worship Batman if you want. So there's a huge wide range of things to worship. There's not really any limits in paganism, really. But what I would say is all spirits can be worked with. And that's another thing. Excuse me, guys. Basically, all spirits can be worked with, like fairies, angels, demons, dragons, all sorts of spirits can be worked with. But before worshipping a deity or worshipping a god or spirit, you do need to ask yourself this very serious question: you can work with them, but is it safe to work with them? Because believe it or not, some gods might be slightly dangerous to work with opposed to other gods. Like Aphrodite, for example, she's quite a safe deity to work with, the goddess of love. But if you actually, for Medusa, for example, I know people do worship Medusa, but the thing is that spirits, like even demons, they can get angered pretty easily. And that's why I'm very cautious about just working with any god, because it can be dangerous working with some sorts of spirits. So if you are going to work with a god or a spirit, first ask yourself, is it safe to work with them? There's another Greek god I was reading about called Typhoon, who's a titan, and he was the god of anger. And do you think it's safe to work with a god of anger and invoke the god of anger? That's what I'm talking about here. You do need to ask yourself before working with a deity, is it safe to work with them in the first place? What I would say is, say that you do want to become a pagan. Let's say that you're sort of reading about paganism, you're studying different gods, and you're thinking, is this for me? Do you think I might give this a go, see if it suits me? The first thing I would say is ask yourself, when choosing your belief system, the first thing to ask yourself before even getting into paganism is ask yourself, what are you passionate about? What do you feel that passion, connecting with that passion? And you can actually look back for your childhood for inspiration. You can, for example, I always felt a connection to war deities, and I don't know why, but when I was younger, I always wanted to join the army, and I never knew why. And I felt a strong connection to gods associated with war. And so it's asking yourself what you're passionate about. You can look back for your childhood for inspiration. So if you want to work with a love deity or war deity, and do lots of research, study, and see which deity calls to you. And so if you are starting out, I would say first choose a patron, god or goddess. Look through different faiths of inspiration and choose one god and one goddess to work with. So the very first deity I worked with was the god Apollo, who's associated with the music, the sun. He's also called the god of many things, the god of healing. His sister is Artemis. So Apollo was the very first deity I worked with. And what I did is I created an altar for Apollo. I got a statue of him. I had a little altar dish and gave him offerings, and I had a lot of symbology on the table linked to the sun, and that's the thing. And I also chose a goddess. The first goddess I worked with was the goddess Athena, goddess of war and wisdom. And I felt a connection to her because she was a goddess of war, but she also had that honour, and she was also a god of war and wisdom. So I felt a connection to Athena. So those are the very first two deities I worked with. So choose one god and one goddess to work with, research them, and then your next step is to set up a small altar table for them. By altar, I mean that all pagans and witches, they all need a place to work, a place to connect with that deep part of themselves, and that's where having an altar comes in. So if you do have a god or a goddess, I do suggest setting up an altar and research the god or the goddess. So for Apollo, as I said, I chose symbology through the sun, had a red altar cloth, a statue of him, a red candle, and that's the thing. And so set up an altar for your deity, and you can all sorts of belief systems out there, and at first it's just a way of experimenting and seeing what works for you, I'd say. You can even, sorry, it's taking a moment to process this. So forming a relationship with a deity is a bit like forming a relationship with a person. So, for example, you'll be surprised that gods are almost like people. Like, for example, Kronos, god of time, could be seen as quite a stern, very strict school teacher type person with a almost like scary sort of figure to connect with, or an old man who's almost like the father of time. And it's like, imagine forming a relationship with Kronos. You talk to Kronos in your head. Even talking to gods in your head. Your imagination, I believe, bridges the divine. So your imagination is connected to divine. So technically the gods can hear your thoughts. So you can imagine them there in your mind and talk to them in your head. And you'll be surprised what a deep way of connecting with them that is. You can say prayers to them. Also, if you do want to work with a deity and you do ask them for assistance with an issue, the thing is, I think you do need to say prayers to them and give them offerings. So in Greek culture, they sing the Hellenic hymns, which like hymns or a set of like a poem to a deity that sort of rhymes, and they give the gods offerings. So if you do want to ask a deity for help, it might be worth actually giving them an offering first, saying a prayer to them and asking what you want them to help you with, like to find love or to help you get more money. And also deities, they need to give something back. It can't be you doing all the work and the deity just standing there listening. They need to help you. It needs to be a relationship where both teams are valued. So there's nothing wrong with asking your deity to help you with things, because it does need to be some energetic connection between you and the deity. And I talk to the deities in my head, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's giving them daily offerings, researching your deity. And there's different ways of building connection. If you're going to give an offering to Ares, god of war, do you really think you'll give Ares flowers? Do you think Ares would like it if you got him a nice pair of nice flowers and you gave him the flowers? You said prayer to him, here you go Ares, get these flowers. I don't think he would like that very much, being a god of war. So if you do give your deity offerings or daily offerings, give them something that they would like, rather than something that they might be offended by. Because you'll be surprised that deities can sometimes be a bit moody and can get offended. And in some deities, you'll know about it if you did make them angry. So just keep in mind to give them the right offering and saying the right prayers. But giving them daily offerings is a great way of building that connection up with your newfound god or goddess. So what else I'd say, setting up an altar. And I would say connect to your newfound belief daily, and doing just one thing every day to connect to your newfound belief system. So do one thing that connects you to your belief system. It could be writing a poem for a deity. And you don't have to give offerings to a deity. You can do poems, you can do artwork. And you can even do artwork in a deity's honour, and that can be an offering. You can even do things like if you're honouring a god of war, like Athena or Mars, you can do a martial arts session, and you can dedicate that martial arts session as a way of connecting with them. And Hermes, for example, I don't know, he's associated with gambling, and he was actually worshipped by a lot of athletes. So you can do a running circuit in honour of Hermes, or even go to a casino and actually put money in the casino slot and just pray to Hermes and say that's a way of connecting with you. There's lots of ways with working with gods or goddesses or your newfound faith. And I really hope that has given you some things to work on and the ways of connecting with your faith. And I can honestly say, I can say about my belief system last, if that will be of any help to you guys. So I'm a Hellenic pagan, and a lot of Hellenic paganism is structured around the Greek gods, or the 12 Olympians. So the 12 Olympian gods are Zeus, Hera, Apollo, Artemis, Athena, Ares, Poseidon, Hephaestus, Demeter, Aphrodite, Hermes, and the other deities in Greek mythology. I can remembered at that time. But in Greek mythology, it's mainly, of course, there are lesser gods in Greek mythology, but the main gods are the 12 Olympians that are worked with. And one of the most important goddesses in the whole system of Hellenic paganism is the goddess Hestia. And throughout history, I don't know, before giving any other offering to any god, you always have to honour and give an offering to the goddess Hestia, first and last. And surprisingly, there's very, very little said in Greek mythology about the goddess Hestia, but she is a really, really important goddess in the whole system of Hellenic paganism, and she represents the sacred fire in Hellenic paganism. So she was the first one to be swallowed by Kronos, and the last one to be scourged. So the Titans are the pre-Olympian gods, and there's a story about Kronos swallowing his own children, and Zeus and all the other gods, and basically he actually swallowed a stone accidentally and vomited them all up. But basically Hestia was swallowed first and disgorged last, so that's why the Greek Hellenic pagans always worship and honour Hestia before any other god or goddess, and that's how important she is. And she also represents the sacred fire of the home. So she's one of the household gods. And in Hellenic paganism, they give liberations every day too. So what you do is you put some wine in the goblet and you offer liberations to each of the gods. So you honour Hestia first and last. You honour all the other Olympians. You honour different gods on different days. And so Hellenic paganism is very much structured around the Greek way of life. And it's very much structured around ancient Greek culture. But I'm not just talking about Hellenic paganism. It doesn't matter what pagan you are. And like I said, Hestia is the sacred fire of the hearth. And I believe that Hestia is also a sacred fire that connects all pagans. So all paganism, there's some truth in all belief systems out there. There's some truth in them, like God has many, if you can picture one gemstone with many, many, many sides. And each side is a different way of seeing the divine. So you can see the divine through many, many different facets of a diamond, yet it's the same diamond, it's the same universal force. So what I would say is, do your research, pick one god and one goddess you feel a connection to, research that god or goddess, give them daily offerings, and try and get a relationship with them, try and get to know them, and not say what you want them to help you with. You can say prayers to them or write poems to them, and do one thing every day that connects you to your pagan path, even if it's meditating with your feet on the ground and connecting to the earth. Remember, paganism is an earth-centered religion, and just do one thing a day that connects to you, to your pagan faith. Set up an altar and pick that one god or goddess. So I'm going to finish the session for today, but really quickly before I finish, I know I can't do psychic readings with people without their permission, but Melissa, if you like, I can do a psychic reading for you if it's any help. And I could see if there's any deities that might want to build a relationship and connect with you, if that's any help. Okay. Ah. Interesting. Okay, I feel like two god or goddesses are trying to connect to you. And I have the Hermit and the Nine of Pentacles. And I have the King of Cups and the King of Wands. So I feel like, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but I'm feeling like Norse mythology and connecting with the gods of Norse mythology and even connecting with the god Odin. I don't know if you ever checked out, what's it called? Like German beliefs or like that word I'm thinking of, Norse paganism. But even connecting with the god Odin or the goddess Freya could be a way, it could be something to connect with. And I feel like Norse paganism might suit you really, really well somehow. And I feel like that might really be a way of connecting with you with your faith. So what I would say is try to check out Norse gods and read up about Odin and Freya. And there's a story in Norse paganism that Odin basically sacrificed his eye for knowledge, and he hung on something called the Weld Tree for 9 days and 9 nights, and on the 9th night he was gifted the runes. So he was actually sacrificed a part of himself for divine knowledge. So I really feel like Norse paganism, like the Hermit card, is a way, something that might be really good for you to get into and check out. And also, Rachel, I feel like you might, I can see if there's any gods or deities trying to connect with you as well, if that's okay, Rachel. I can do a quick reading for you. See if there's any god or goddess trying to connect to you. Okay. Hangman card. Okay, I don't know why I'm thinking this. I have the King of Wands, the Hanged Man, and the Ace of Pentacles. And I was thinking of the god Prometheus. In Greek mythology, there's a god called Prometheus who stole fire from the gods. And he was actually punished by, he was actually tied to a big rock, and he had a eagle pick a sort of vulture, eat his liver every day as punishment for stealing the fire from the gods. And I don't know why I'm thinking this, but the god Prometheus might be a way of connecting, and might be a deity you might be thinking of working with, Rachel. So if you want, research the god Prometheus who stole fire from the gods and see if that might be a way of connecting for you. And I really hope this has been helpful to you guys and you really like my talk on paganism for beginners. And I really hope this does give you something to go on so you can start your journey into paganism if you feel as though that route's for you. And just go with what you're passionate about, guys, and see what works for you. It's about experimenting, reading up about different belief systems and seeing what works for you. And really quickly, before I finish, I wanted to say something really quickly, something called shamanism. And that's probably the oldest religion known to man. But shamanism is, they worship, some elements of it is worshipping animals, like the spirit of the wolf or the tiger, and connecting with your own power animal. But shamanism is one thing I haven't mentioned yet. It's one of the oldest religions you can ever think of. All paganism was based on ancient shamanic practices. So shamanic practices involved a lot of trance work, a lot of, one main practice of shamanism is a technique called shamanic journeying. And so if you are interested in shamanism, Google it on the internet and read up about it and see if the shamanic practices suit you and experiment, see what suits you guys. I hope you enjoyed my workshop. I haven't been doing many of these, so I'm so sorry if I seem a bit anxious talking. But I really enjoyed my talk today, guys, and I hope you enjoyed my workshop. All the best, guys. To our next work.